The air in London, even on the brightest of days, often carries a certain damp chill, a ghostly reminder of the past clinging to the present. But on this particular day, something more than just the usual London fog hung heavy over Kensington Palace. It was the 28th anniversary memorial for Princess Diana, a day etched in the collective memory of a nation, a day that refused to fade into the gentle amnesia of time. The gratitude reception, a small affair meant to honor those who had stood by Diana during her tumultuous life, felt less like a celebration and more like a tense, carefully orchestrated dance. Familiar faces from the British royal family mingled awkwardly, their smiles strained, their eyes darting nervously. It was a scene ripe with unspoken tensions, a silent battlefield where old wounds threatened to reopen. And then she arrived, Lady Sarah Spencer, Diana's older sister, her presence an unexpected tremor in the already fragile atmosphere. It was the first time she had set foot in the palace since her sister's funeral, a stark reminder of the void that Diana had left behind. Her silver hair was neatly arranged, framing a face etched with both grief and determination. There was a quiet strength about her, a sense of purpose that drew every eye in the room. Even Prince William, burdened by his own memories and responsibilities, paused to acknowledge her, his gaze a mixture of respect and apprehension. But the coldest reaction came from Camilla, the current queen consort, a woman who had spent years carefully crafting her image, a woman who seemed to actively avoid any mention of Diana's name. Why had Sarah come? The question hung in the air like a whispered accusation. She offered only a brief explanation, a polite acknowledgement of the tribute to those who had supported Diana. But everyone knew there was more to it than that. Sarah Spencer wasn't one for empty gestures. She was a woman driven by loyalty, by a fierce love for her sister, a love that time and tragedy had only intensified. As the reception unfolded, the soothing strains of classical music did little to mask the underlying tension. A man in a guard's uniform moved through the crowd, his face stern, his eyes constantly scanning the room. Alex Morris, a former aide to Diana, now serving Camilla, seemed particularly uneasy, his gaze flickering with a nervous energy. The name Spencer clearly stirred something within him. A long-buried promise, a secret he had guarded for years. While Camilla engaged in polite conversation with ambassadors and dignitaries, Alex slipped away, disappearing into the dimly lit western corridor of the palace. It was there, under the watchful gaze of Diana's portrait, that he finally approached Sarah Spencer. "Lady Spencer," he rasped, his voice barely above a whisper, "I need to speak with you, alone." Sarah turned, her eyes studying the man before her, his face etched with fear and desperation. She knew, instinctively, that whatever he had to say would change everything. Alex reached into a small bag, his hands trembling slightly, and pulled out an object wrapped in black velvet. He placed it in her hand, his eyes pleading. "An old tape," he said, his voice barely audible. "It once belonged to the princess." Sarah fell silent, her fingers tracing the faded label on the tape. It was small, insignificant, yet it felt as though she were holding a piece of Diana's very soul. Years ago, Alex continued, his words tumbling out in a rush. "Under orders, I was told to remove her files, but in that bag was a tape the queen didn't know about. I kept it in case the truth was ever needed." Sarah's fingers tightened around the tape, her mind racing. What secrets did this tape hold? What truths had Diana tried to protect? And what lengths would Camilla go to in order to keep them buried? The answers, she knew, lay within this small, unassuming object, a potential weapon that could shake the very foundations of the monarchy. That night, Chelsea felt a world away from Kensington's gilded cages. Sarah's small flat, crammed with well-loved books and the comforting clutter of a life lived outside the spotlight, offered a sanctuary of sorts. But even here, surrounded by the familiar, the weight of the tape felt immense. It wasn't just plastic and magnetic ribbon. It was a Pandora's box, a potential weapon, and a heartbreaking echo of a sister lost too soon. She unearthed an old tape player, a relic from her father's study, a device that had probably spun countless tales of family gatherings and forgotten melodies. Tonight, it would play a different tune, a discordant symphony of betrayal and secrets. The hiss was almost deafening in the quiet room, a prelude to the storm that was about to break. Then Diana's voice, soft, achingly familiar, yet laced with a weariness that cut Sarah to the core. "If one day you hear my voice, sister, it may already be too late." The words hung in the air, a ghostly premonition from beyond the grave. Diana always had a sixth sense for the darkness lurking beneath the surface of royal life. There are things I never imagined, Sarah. The articles, the rumors, they don't just appear. And Camilla is the one behind it all. The accusation, spoken with such quiet conviction, landed like a physical blow. Sarah had always suspected, of course. She'd seen the subtle digs, the carefully orchestrated leaks, the calculated campaign to undermine Diana's image. But to hear it confirmed in Diana's own voice was another level of betrayal. Sarah closed her eyes, the weight of grief and anger threatening to overwhelm her. The room fell silent, save for the mournful whisper of the wind outside. She could almost feel Diana's presence, a comforting hand on her shoulder, urging her to fight. Big Ben struck midnight, its chimes echoing across the city, a somber reminder of the relentless march of time. But for Sarah, time had stopped. She was trapped in the past, forced to confront the demons that had haunted her for decades. Gazing out at the twinkling lights of London, Sarah's eyes hardened. This tape wasn't just a collection of dying words. It was a spark, a catalyst that could ignite a revolution. The throne might be made of stone and tradition, but it was built on a foundation of public trust, and that trust was about to be tested. The morning brought a stillness to Clarence House, an unnatural calm before the storm. A private secretary, one of Camilla's most trusted confidantes, delivered the news. Lady Sarah Spencer had left Kensington Palace with something given to her by Alex Morris. The secretary couldn't say exactly what it was, but Morris's haunted expression spoke volumes. When Camilla entered her office, the temperature seemed to drop several degrees. She was a master of composure, a queen who had learned to turn a smile into a weapon. But today, behind the perfectly coiffed hair and the elegant gray dress, a flicker of fear betrayed her. "Alex Morris," she said, her voice deceptively soft. "Where is he?" The secretary bowed, his face pale. "Your Majesty, he was absent from this morning's shift. They say he left the residence last night." Camilla's hand tightened around the pearl necklace at her throat, her knuckles bone white. Years of carefully constructed lies, of painstaking image management, threatened to unravel with a single tape. "Find him," she commanded, her voice like ice. "Find what he gave away. And please, don't let anyone else know about this." And so began the hunt. A desperate scramble to bury the past before it could resurface and destroy everything Camilla had fought to achieve. The palace became a pressure cooker of suspicion, every letter scrutinized, every conversation monitored. The queen, who had finally tasted the fruits of her ambition, was now haunted by the ghost of the woman she had tried so hard to erase. Camilla sat alone in the reading room, the light from the window illuminating the portraits that lined the walls. Her gaze lingered on an old framed photo of Diana, a picture William had insisted on keeping, a constant, silent reminder of the past. Though she said nothing, the portrait's eyes seemed to pierce through her, gentle yet merciless. 28 years, she thought. All that time, and she still won't let me go. Camilla knew that if Sarah truly had that tape, it could destroy everything she had built over nearly 3 decades. Her reputation, her status, and the fragile public trust. She had walked through darkness to become queen consort, a dream she once dared not imagine. But the past, it seemed, would never rest. She summoned her private secretary, Walter. "Seal all the old document rooms, media files, recordings, everything, even the 1,997 archives. Ma'am, especially those." The order was carried out immediately. Dusty boxes were removed from the basement, whisked away in unmarked vans. A technical team was called in to encrypt old media campaign data. Camilla oversaw every step, her face a mask of composure, though inside a storm raged. That afternoon, she and the king appeared at a community event in Wiltshire, smiling, shaking hands with locals as if no crisis loomed. The cameras flashed, capturing the image of a perfect queen, a woman of grace and compassion. But back at Clarence House, that smile vanished entirely. Late that night, Camilla sat in her study, surrounded by old newspapers spread across her desk. A 1,996 headline screamed, "Princess Diana unstable, needs psychiatric help." In the margin, scrawled in blue ink, was a small initial C. She sighed softly, not out of regret, but from the cold, hard realization that ink may dry, but it never truly fades. The phone rang, shattering the silence. It was Walter. "Your Majesty." Our people have found Alex Morris. Where? Outside London. He's staying at a small inn near Kent. Camilla tilted her head slightly, a predatory gleam in her eyes. Handle it delicately. A pause on the other end. Ma'am, do you meet? Camilla cut him off, her voice soft but firm. Tell him I wish to meet. If he refuses, remind him who's been paying his rent for the past 15 years. She hung up, the silence amplifying the frantic beating of her own heart. Then she called Walter back. If Sarah Spencer truly has it, I want to know what Diana said on that tape. Walter nodded, his face betraying nothing. The door closed, leaving the queen alone in the pale golden light. On the desk, an old diary lay open, its first page bearing her own handwriting. Once the truth is buried deep enough, people will call it the past. Camilla gave a cold smile, the smile of someone who knew the storm was rising, but was ready to stand in its center. She had spent a lifetime learning how. The story began many years earlier, when Diana was still the Princess of Wales and the royal family was facing a public relations nightmare. The tabloids dissected every detail of Diana's life, from her public tears to rumors of depression and affairs. The Princess of Hearts was becoming a liability. Camilla, then still a woman in the shadows, felt the sting of public scorn. Thousands of hate letters, contemptuous glances on the street. She knew that without controlling the narrative, she would be crushed before she ever had a chance to step into the light. That fear birthed a plot. One winter night in 1996, Camilla sat in a small room at her home in Ray Mill, the desk lamp casting harsh shadows on her face, her eyes burning with a desperate resolve. Across from her sat Alex Morris, Diana's former close aide, a man whose loyalty could be bought, or so she hoped. She offered him wine, a soft voice, and a promise. I need a favor, Alex. Just one small thing. After this, you'll never have to worry again. Alex eyed her wearily. Does it involve the princess, ma'am? Camilla smiled, a chillingly disarming smile. It's about the honor of the royal family. Those words, to Alex, a man trained to serve the crown, were a sacred command. He asked no more. The task? Retrieve the briefcase Diana always carried, the one containing sensitive documents. According to Camilla, they were evidence the princess could be exploited to smear the monarchy. But Alex saw in her eyes that she wasn't telling the whole truth. A week later, the opportunity arose. Diana was out of town at a charity event. Alex was sent to her apartment to check security. He moved through the quiet rooms, the afternoon sunlight filtering through the curtains, illuminating the desk where the briefcase sat. He opened it. Papers were neatly organized. On top, an unsent letter in Diana's soft handwriting. If anything happens, Sister Sarah will know what to do. Alex paused, his conscience pricking. For a moment, he considered stopping, turning back. But Camilla's voice echoed in his head. For the honor of the royal family, he closed the briefcase and took it.